doesn't work well with colons and even in comments. You can have a comment in your zip signaling, and libozip won't be able to make a call. On the other side, zip express router doesn't like spaces in URIs, which is, as a matter of fact, illegal. You can have usernames that do have spaces, but you have to escape the space. So it's legal for there to actually die on that packet or fail on that packet. Okay, there's another one. Like OZIP, like the space, OZIP didn't have any issues with the space in the packet, so okay, that's fine. But the zip express router got a packet that has the space encoded. So if you compare the URIs, it's different URIs. So if you're like writing a billing ticket, your billing system might not recognize one of the URIs, but your zip router still knows, okay, that's that particular user. I know that user. You can make that call, or you can call the PSTN. You can spend money, but your billing system won't be able to match that user against the database just by using different types of notation. And actually, there are systems using libozip for lawful deception, and you can just trick them by either using a space sign or adding a comma to a comment in zip signaling. So it would have no effect whatsoever on the calls you're making. It's just a comment, but the lawful deception system won't be able to actually see that message since the parser fails. What you see is that the IFTAR zip express router is designed to pretty much ignore bugs if they do happen, and it doesn't even pass the whole message by default. So it doesn't care about the media descriptions. It just passes whatever headers it has to pass and sees, okay, I can establish that call and just send that message off to some other device. But libozip, in contrast, is passing the whole message. It's way slower, and it actually fails, like, many more times, just based on the fact that it's actually passing the whole message. Yeah, that's a bad. So, how could we exploit that? Call ID spoofing is the most interesting one. One of the things you can do in Germany, you could have done in Germany like a year ago, was you would spoof your caller ID from a cell phone, and you would just call your own cell phone, assuming that you're calling it from your own cell phone. So it doesn't make any sense to call your own cell phone, so it would end up on your mailbox. But since you're calling from your cell phone, you've got your SIM card in there, and you've got a contract, so you're authorized to call your voicemail without having to enter a PIN number, since you've got your own cell phone, you're already authenticated. So by spoofing your cell phone number from the voice over IP world and calling your cell phone, or calling somebody else's cell phone, you can listen to somebody else's voicemail without having to enter a PIN. You can do some call forwarding settings or whatever. And the way the German government, or Deutsche Telekom, got around that problem was they enforced in policy saying whatever ISP or PSTN carrier is injecting calls to our network that's using a spoof number is liable to whatever amount of fees. So you're just not allowed to inject calls anymore, but they still have the same problem. So it's all the tests that I did was based on our own PSTN network, since apparently Deutsche Telekom is really looking at the network, and if you're injecting fake calls, they might get angry at you, and I don't want to be the first guy at our company to just get busted for that. So how could we spoof the caller ID? As I said earlier, there's many implementations on how to do call ID. You've got the to and the from fields, which is like 5 years ago. Then we've got remote party, which is a draft that's being implemented and standardized by Cisco, and it's present in most of the PSTN devices. And then we've got the so-called privacy extensions, which is like the true RFCs. But unfortunately, the privacy extensions are newer than the zip RFCs. So if some company comes up to you and says, okay, I've got some zip-enabled device, and I want to sell it to you, and it does support the latest zip RFC, yeah, it does support the zip RFC, but it does not support the privacy extensions. So sooner or later, we're going to run into some issue. So what you do is you do a phone call from a zip device, and you add in all the methods you know on how to actually set your caller ID. And the zip proxy might know about remote party ID, but it might not know about peer-asserted identity, which is the privacy extension. So zip proxy, we're doing it on our network, we just ignore the remote party ID set by the client and say, okay, the only remote party ID you're allowed to set is the number that's in your contract. So we just pull the call ID from the contract database and say, okay, just put that number in there if you want call ID. That's the number we're going to show. We're not supposed to show anything else. But if you didn't know about any other RFC or any other standard, we might just leave the peer-asserted identity header in there and send it off to our PSDN gateway. Since the guys that are doing our PSDN gateway are updating the Cisco firmware every once in a while, and we're running another software that's where the developers are pretty good, they've already implemented peer-asserted identity. And remote party ID is just a draft, whereas peer-asserted identity is the latest and best RFC in terms of call ID. They just ignore remote party ID and say, okay, I'm just going to add the number that's in the peer-asserted identity. And suddenly in the PSDN, you've got a fake call ID. How do you fix it? On your zip proxy, you have to know what kind of mechanisms you're using for your call ID, and just drop all incoming headers that are used for like call ID. And I talked to a couple of other ISPs in Germany, and we're a small working group trying to get things fixed before they actually become issues. And we had lots of ISPs that didn't really filter out like the peer-asserted identity. There's still some ISPs in Germany where you can inject phone calls. You can just sign up for a free contract. You've got 3 minutes to use with your account, and you can make free spoof calls towards the German PSDN, even though it's obviously forbidden, but it just works. It's that easy. Talking about the resources, yeah, obviously get SMAP, but do get the updated version. The parser test program is just limited to the Zip Express router. That's what I've written and contributed to that. It's just, if you're an ISP and you're running there and you want to know what messages your Zip server is failing on, you just take that tool, either run it on your live system or run it on a dedicated machine, just throw some PCAP files on it, and you're going to see with methods your box is failing. The stack comparison tool is comparing libozip against either OpenZare or StockZare, and the ZipFP is in there. It's a passive fingerprinting tool that I've written before I started writing SMAP, just to get a basic feel on how things look like. I do have some conclusions. Obviously, passive fingerprinting is possible. We expect that for split countermeasures, it comes in really handy. And we're actually using some sort of passive fingerprinting right now to drop malicious packets from unsupported clients to lessen the impact of all those bad passive packets on our network. And as you can see, active fingerprinting is being done. It's pretty accurate. The hit ratio is pretty good, and the identify rate is pretty good. But net and firewall issues have to be solved to actually identify all those soft phones behind nets. What's going to happen in the future? We're going to have more zip extensions, like we had the zip ping method that just came up like 2 months ago, and nobody implemented that. So for fingerprinting, that's one of the prime targets to look at. I'm personally looking at session border controllers more and more. And if you've got some bug in a session border controller, it's a major hassle. And suddenly, instead of dealing with open source, you're dealing with the company that you hopefully have a support contract with. And getting bugs fixed usually takes at least a week to get beta firmware, probably a month, and at some points they just don't respond to you. So having a session border controller might be a major headache. Split is going to probably hit us in like 2 years, 3 years. If you're living in Germany, legal issues are way more important. You're not allowed to drop a call or something without asking for permissions. So running an ISP is not that much of fun if you're looking at all the laws. What I'm going to do in the future is implementing a passive fingerprinting system that's probably going to be incorporated in some infrastructure just to look at traffic and identify malicious content before it actually can cause any damage. Nothing would be that interesting without having some 0 day in here. We are running Cisco PIX firewalls. It's several POPs, and it turns out that if you enable zip inspection and you've got a zip device behind a net that's registering to an outside zip server, you can open up whatever port you want based on UDP, TCP, you name it. probably access internal servers from the outside just by shoving in one additional contact into the 200OK method that you can fake from the outside. It's really easy to do, and the contact will not be checked. We had a look at the debug output, and it was like, okay, that's not happening there. It's too easy to actually do. I'm not offering any predefined exploit, but if you're interested in how to do that, just come talk to me. That's really easy to do, and we're talking to Cisco right now to get it fixed. Thanks for your time, and I think. Okay, I thought I thought I had like 5 minutes. So okay, we've lots of time for questions. So yeah, go ahead. Any questions? Yeah, sure. The question was what version of the zip firewall I was using. I wanted to look that up, but unfortunately I lost my RSR token like 1 week ago, so I wasn't able to look it up. It was, I think it's like 7.3 or whatever, the latest version. We actually updated the one of the fixed firewalls to just see if it's fixed in the current version, so it's still in there. Any more questions? Okay, yeah. I'll be here for another 2-3 days, so just come up to me if you're looking into any particular exploits, and thanks for your time.